Hello, Dr. Cooper here. So I just want to very briefly talk to you today about where world history came from, and you can read more about this in Stern's article, which is your assigned reading for today. So many people think that world history is a venerable field, but it's really only been around for, in all seriousness, about 20 years. And it is the emphasis of the history department at St. John's. Our PhD is in world history, and the intro course that we teach to history to all undergraduates is in world history. So it's important as we start to think about this course about where and why this field developed and why so very recently. Well, first and foremost, world history is a teaching field. It grew out of the desire to teach world history instead of a Western civilization survey, both in high school and in colleges. And this is pretty unusual. And it's unusual for a field, a historical subfield, not to grow out of research in that field. And it has a little bit of a strange trajectory that we're going to try and understand in the coming days. Of course, trying to tell history from a world perspective is not a new idea, and as you'll read in the Stern article and tomorrow in Manning, there are older ideas that try to encapsulate a world perspective, or at least the known world to them, such as the ancient Greek Herodotus, the Chinese historian Sima Qin, and the Middle Eastern historian Ibn Khaldun. But since the 18th century, when history really got started as a modern discipline, the tendency has been to write national histories, and this makes sense if we think about it. The field of history was developing at the same time, especially we're talking mainly in Europe here, at the same time as a greater emphasis on nationalism and imperialism in European countries. And so national histories inherently have a tendency to be Eurocentric and nationalistic and imperialistic, and there are many problems with those things, which the people that started to develop the field of world history readily recognized. That's not to say that everybody who lived and worked as a historian in a particular country worked on that nation's history. Of course, that wouldn't make any sense. There were, of course, German historians working on Egyptian history and French historians working on Chinese history. But the perspective was very much within the nation or the empire. So while the history of the Roman Empire, for example, encompasses European, Middle Eastern, and African history, after the fall of the Roman Empire in the West, sort of any notion of looking at a later history of these places as anything like connected just wouldn't have been the case in the 19th century and 20th century. That idea would not have had any real relevance. So, as you'll read in Stern's, in the 1960s, the first rumblings of world history began, and he particularly mentions on the more research side William McNeill of the University of Chicago and his book Rise of the West, which doesn't actually sound very much like a world history textbook, but he's trying to explain this phenomenon of the seemingly sort of unstoppable rise of the West, which of course we now know was not, we didn't have that perspective in the 1960s, is likely to turn a corner in decades to come, with other nations and areas of the world rising to prominence. On the teaching side of but William McNeill, I should say, did base his history of the West within a global context and talk on equal footing almost about other civilizations. That's why his book is so important, and why we kind of often chart the origins of world history with him and with a colleague of his, Lefton Stavrianos, who tackled more the teaching side of the world history conundrum at his university. And his advice, which I'm going to pass on to you here, and you'll probably hear several times from other people, is dare to admit if you're trying to write a world history syllabus, you can't possibly incorporate all the history of all the world. And increasingly, the tendency to write a Western Civ course and add a little bit of world history to it is falling away as more and more people are thinking of a thoroughly sort of integrated and equally balanced world history course. And this is still a work in progress. So throughout the 1980s, we see scattered world history courses. There's some move afoot to approve a world history course, but that wasn't thoroughly developed, and it didn't begin to be taught until the 1990s. And so I'm going to leave it here because I think Stearns will probably do a better job of telling you how this happens, the politics behind it, and who is in support of the idea of developing a world history curriculum, and why. And the pressure is coming from several different directions, and who was against it at the time. And it's a really interesting debate, which places the development of a field of history within the broader political history of the United States, and this is a field that did specifically develop in the United States and is only just beginning to make connections to world historians from other nations and regions. Okay, I am going to click out of this and just take you back to the Facebook page for a second and make sure everybody knows what's supposed to go on. So when you go to today's class, you'll see we begin with the document questions and goals, and as I'm going to list all these things, these are things you've got to do: A, B, C, D, E. Okay, so most important job, read the syllabus. B, watch this video. C, complete the 2 getting to know each other exercises that are below. And I'll just remind you again, you have to click on the blue title here to complete that exercise. The readings today is the first chapter by Peter Stearns in Heidi Roop's book, Teaching World History in the 21st Century. And then so those are the two truths and a lie, my time machine trip, are just 2 getting to know each other exercises, and then you'll do a reflections journal on the reading for today, and just talk a little bit about yourself in that, and where you're coming to when we approach, where you're coming from when we approach world history. So the style of your journal is I want you to write it in kind of a journal style, but be aware that we all can read it, and you're free to write whatever you want at any point in time, rather than a formal report on what you've read and trying to sort of account for everything you read. Talk about how that intersects your understanding more, what you didn't know before you read this, what you found compelling, what you found interesting, what you found challenging, what you found to be a little dodgy even. And as we go through, I might even throw in a few other questions for you to think about as I'm trying to get you to develop your teaching portfolio. So I'm just going to go ahead and click on this journal entry 1 here. Okay, so the first thing, I'm going to start and create the first thread. You can do this same process, and when you click on create thread, you'll see that the description, the form description comes up there, and I'm just going to do something very quickly here. Okay, so I'm not keeping you on video for too long, and I'm going to submit that. And then you'll see that's the thread I created, and you can read that thread. And so when you come on, you'll click on create thread, you'll do your own writing, but then look down here, hopefully there'll be other people, and you can read their threads too and create comments. And a thread is just the same thing as a post, but it's just a way of stacking posts. So the person who posted first is on top and the replies are below, and you follow it like a thread through the conversation. Okay, that's all I have to say for today. I hope everything is going well and you're not hitting any major roadblocks and everything is understandable. I just realized I haven't put my email front and center on this. I will add that to the left-hand column. But it's Cooper, Coopert, @stjohns.edu. Okay, thank you.